Welcome back to In Our Community. My name is Prashant Marathay, and I have the honor and pleasure to interview for a second time Mr. Marc Isaac Potter. Marc, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
One of the things that we had talked about in the last show that I wanted to kind of go into it a little bit more deeply was you've worked in a number of different genres of writing. You've written seminars and presented those. And over the course of time that I've known you, you've also written some very interesting, poignant, short poems. And in my mind, that kind of is the gamut from something that takes seconds to communicate to something that might take over 3 days to communicate. And I'm curious what you're trying to achieve and how you choose which one of these genres to use for anything that you're working on.
Okay, so it's mostly about process.
Okay.
Different people process information differently.
Ah, okay.
I'll give the example I'll give you is fiction. Fiction is the example. Okay. You've got books like what used to be called Remembrance of Things Past by Proust. That's 7 volumes, it's all one novel, 7 volumes long.
Okay.
It's over 1 million words. Then you've got things like something that is misappropriated to Ernest Hemingway. He wasn't the one who actually said it first, which is a 6-word piece of fiction.
A 6-word piece of fiction.
6-word, you can say it, 6-word piece of fiction.
Oh, a 6-word
but
piece of fiction. Okay.
I have to get it in the right order or it won't have the effect I want it to have. Okay. Baby shoes for sale, never worn.
Right. I remember you sharing that.
It tells you a tragic story about a baby who obviously was born or maybe born dead, who never got to wear its first pair of shoes.
Right, right.
Now, we don't know who, I don't think we know who actually came up with that, but it's misappropriated to Ernest Hemingway.
Okay.
Supposedly. So those are the two gamuts.
Yeah. People
process differently. Not everybody's going to read Proust. And not everybody's going to read that 6-word thing. So it depends. If you're writing a micro poem that's just a few words, if you're writing microfiction, which is under 100 words, you're writing flash fiction, which is under 1,000 words. You're writing a short story, a long story, a novelette, a novella, or a novel. They're all different. They all have different audiences. You can say different things in each one.
Right.
You can say things in a novel that are more background, more in depth, more chances for irony in a novel than say a piece of microfiction, which has to be under 100 words, and you've got to choose every single comma carefully.
So it occurs
to answer your question.
Yes, it prompts another one. It occurs to me in the works of fiction that I've seen and I've read, there is a certain length required to build up the characters, to build up the plot, to take it to some sort of climax so that you have this resolution, revelation, etc. And in these different lengths, you have to be able to do that. Like in the 6-word piece of fiction, there was a character or maybe 2 characters that have been introduced in that short period of time. And there is a thought and then a resolution in it, all encapsulated in that one part.
Yes.
But in something like Huckleberry Finn from Mark Twain, that there's a journey that these 2 characters take that has to kind of be given a certain amount of time to develop before it can reach its climax, which is, Huckleberry Finn's realization or coming to terms with the concept of slavery. So it takes some time for that to evolve and create. When you're putting together either a seminar or a short poem, are you thinking of it in those terms? Like, how much time am I going to need to be able to develop this?
No, definitely not. It's not about logic. It's about art. Art is about something other than logic
Okay.
and manufacturing. It's not an assembly line. It's not manufacturing. It's not process management.
But do you
It's
walk into
art.
it? But do you walk into it with, I want to convey this thought. I want to convey this emotion.
No, let me blow your mind.
Okay.
I hope that this should blow your mind. I hope. A lot of my writing, and I would say approaching 100%,
Okay.
I don't write it.
Okay.
I don't write it. I hear it.
Ah, okay.
Kandinsky, remember Kandinsky? He could hear colors.
I don't, but okay.
Well, you got your computer there. Look up Kandinsky while you're talking to me.
Oh, I'm listening
Anyway,
to you.
okay. That's a mistake. That's a first mistake. I hear it and I go get a pen or a typewriter and I write down what I hear.
Okay.
Now, once I hear it, I might massage it. I might
Sure.
edit it. I might change it. But the basic thing, I heard it. And sometimes that hearing is so powerful that in the middle of the night, I have to get up out of the blankety blank bed and start writing. It's almost like channeling.
Okay.
I don't want to become a channeler. I don't want to become known as a channeler because people think that someone who channels it is not a writer.
Yeah.
Just a spiritual being. And I had my chance with Zen and other spiritual things. So I'm going to just stick with writing for now.
Okay. But
yeah,
when
does that answer your question?
It does, but I want to take it a little further. When you hear this story, this concept, and you put it down on paper, at the end of that, is that done? Or do you have to step back at it and look at it and go, in order to get this thought so that others will hear it, appreciate it, understand it even, I have to do something else to it?
I'm very glad you answered that question, Prashant. Thank you. Number two, what you said. Next question.
Okay. Okay. So you then have to massage it and put it in a way that other people can understand it.
And oftentimes that takes 50 years of experience.
Okay. But that's what I want to ask you about, because now that's the combination of inspiration, however it was given to you, whether you channeled it or were inspired somehow.
Yep.
And how you brought Marc Isaac Potter to the table to create something.
Here's one way you can do that. There's a lot of ways. Someday I want to teach a seminar to writers, and I love teaching creative writing. One way to do that is to take words and use them in ways they have not been used before.
Okay.
Now, you could call that misappropriation. I don't mean cultural misappropriation. I mean taking a word like turn and making it into something other than what we think of it as.
Okay.
You know,
okay.
I don't have a real good example right now. I thought of trying to get some writing, but writing takes a lot of time on the camera.
Sure. But here's the part that I'm trying to zero in on. I get the fact that that is some idea that you have that you would like to further develop. But if I take the inspiration that you have and I add to it the 50 years of Marc Isaac Potter experience, how does Marc Isaac Potter take that idea and fashion it into something that people can digest? How do you do that?
Oh, that's a tough question. Okay, so you have to use words in a new way.
Okay.
That's one of the few things editors will really bite for.
Okay.
I got published a bunch of times. The reason I did is I think is because editors like something that sounds fresh and new. And the way you can, since everything's been written now for hundreds of years, the way you do that is you use a word, like you use a noun as a verb.
Okay.
Or you use an adjective as an adverb, or you put two adverbs together when it really sounds like it's awkward. And then the next sentence you say, that sounds awkward. Something like that. Some Japanese American writers or Japanese writers of the early 1900s would do that. And I can't remember their names now, but one man wrote a long short story. Had started with the letter R. And I don't remember what it was about, but he would do that constantly. This
Okay.
was 1900 before anybody thought of doing it.
Nice.
He would write a paragraph and then he'd say, do you like what I'm writing? Should I write it differently? To the reader. I mean, you know, he really was being brave for his time.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if I asked me if I
You
come
kind
close
of
to-
did. I mean, what I'm hearing is you have this inspiration that you get from wherever, and then in order to convey it to someone else, you're having to massage it. And one of the techniques you use to massage it is to try to use words in a different way to convey that thought.
Yes.
And so I think that's
Some way that's new. I mean, if you can say it with the words, the normal words we have, and say it in a new way, that's fine.
okay.
But chances are there's so much has been written. I mean, you know how much is being written,
Look, but
hundreds of
I
thousands
guess-
of words per second.
And let me rephrase the question a little bit. Let's say you get inspiration from somewhere. How do you decide if you're going to work on that as a 6-word story or turn it into a 5-day seminar?
It usually comes to me with some inclination.
Okay.
Like if I said to you, the shadow walks
Uh-huh.
around a straight curve,
Okay.
you know, maybe you're now curious enough to read the next thing,
Okay.
because shadows don't usually walk and straight curves are not usually straight
That's right.
curves
That's
or
right.
whatever.
Yeah.
So you're wondering what the blankety blank.
Okay, but something like that, would you stop there or would you turn that into a short story?
It really depends. It really depends. A lot of it happens in my massaging of it and my process of it. And sometimes I'll get a piece like that where maybe it's a 12-line poem, but then I'll say, okay, part of this, you know, my mind starts working. What if this shadow were a person? What if this shadow, and then I refer in my mind to books, like there's a book called, there's a I don't know if it was Sessenboom or who it was. It was a Dutch writer who wrote a book called The Following Story.
Okay.
And in the story, a man wakes up not where he went to bed and in a place that he had woken up 20 years ago.
Mm.
And in the 20 years ago that he woke up there, he was in the middle of having an affair.
Okay.
So there we have all this complication in like the first few sentences.
Yeah.
We got to stick with it to see what happens. Okay,
What
there's
happened?
enough there for a story.
Yes.
You know, what about the second woman? What about the first woman?
Yeah.
What about his relationship to having an affair? Is he okay with it? Is he not okay with it? Does he cause himself more grief than happiness?
So in this example, that's something that I could easily see at the onset would be a book, right? It would be, multiple pages because there's so much complexity in there that it has to be taken out or opened up. But it sounds like you're letting the story tell you how long it should be rather than
that's absolutely correct.
you telling the story.
Most good writers will tell you when they start a new story, they'll call another writer and say, I don't know where this is going, or I don't know what this character wants from me.
Interesting.
I build relationships. I'm being very serious now. Remember the word serious. You got to watch show number 1, folks.
Yes.
He's got on a different blue shirt. I don't know what's up. What was I saying? You were
talking about how you develop relationships with characters.
I develop relationships with things, with characters and with things. A friend of mine, when computers were first coming out to the public in the late 90s, a friend of mine bought me a top-end computer system. She bought it for me and she put it in my apartment. It sat there for a year before I touched it. Okay. I have to build relationships with things, with my characters, with people, with computers, with spoons, with lights, with phones, with bed sheets, in order to be around them safely, in order to feel safe.
Right.
So the characters are definitely telling me what they want. I've written some book-length manuscripts that are terrible because the characters wanted it.
Okay.
I wrote, I about within the last 4 years, I wrote a story, a lot of women in the story, which I really liked. And there were two girls that were twins who had been separated. That's a pretty common thing in like cop shows and stuff, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The criminal has this DNA and this guy swears he didn't do it. It's because he has a twin.
Twin, yeah. I just watched a show with that same premise on it.
Yeah. It's all over the place. But you know, some famous movie maker said that there are only 7 major plots in the whole world. And then another famous movie maker, I want to say Clint Eastwood, said, no, there's only one. There's really only one. Clash and resolution. That's it.
That's it.
Any kind of a clash, you know.
Yeah. Something has to happen, and then it has to get resolved.
Here's John, who just found out he's going to lose his leg to cancer.
Yep.
And on the same day, his friend asked him if he wants to ride a unicycle. A unicycle has one wheel, and he's going to have one leg. But guess what? It's going to be hard to do the unicycle with one leg.
Yeah.
So there's all that stuff underneath.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, when you take a critical poetry class, we always look at all the stuff underneath. What's being intimated? What's being suggested by the writer?
Right.
You know, if a writer says something about Thanksgiving, and then he talks about your drunk uncle at another part of the year, maybe he talks about your drunk uncle who shows up for 4th of July. Yeah. Was that the teacher will ask, well, was that drunk uncle part of this mess that happened at Thanksgiving or not? We don't know for sure.
Makes sense. No? Makes sense. I totally get the fact that depending on how thoughts are arranged, they can suddenly change the meaning of both thoughts. So I get it.
Yes, very much so.
Mark, we're coming close to our time where we have to wrap up. Again, another fascinating discussion, kind of understanding how you process and how you take all of these different thoughts that you get and convert them into the writing that I've seen so often. And thank you for sharing that. So
you're very welcome. Thank you for being on the show.
Okay, thank you for being on the show.
Yes, sir.
That's what I have to say. And for the rest of you,
thanks for being on the show, Mark.
From in our community, thank you very much for watching, and hope to see you next time. All the best.
Good.